All right, welcome back, everybody, to Quiet in the Halls episode 4. We have a very special guest, Myles Amine, who is a San Marino Olympic wrestler, also an ex-alumni here at Catholic Central. I'm very excited to bring him on my podcast, so thank you so much, Myles, for coming on.
Yeah, Mitchell, I'm excited to be here. Been prepping for this one all week.
Yeah? So I know your wrestling is your bread and butter, but what I'm more interested in is why you switched to entrepreneurship versus staying on the wrestling path.
That is a great question. I think I always knew that I wanted to do something outside of the sport of wrestling. It was part of the reason I attended the University of Michigan, being a prestigious university. And I worked really hard to get into the business school and graduate with a Raw School of Business degree. So I kind of knew that I had aspirations outside of wrestling before I'd even kind of gotten to the bulk of where my wrestling success came. And so I would say that it was kind of that innate desire within me when I was, kind of adolescence, adulthood, graduating from Catholic Central, knowing that, there's kind of these high standards that, we try to live our lives to. And obviously the wrestling success was that I kept myself to a high standard on the wrestling mat. But I thought that, just kind of once the Olympic stuff kind of happened partly by accident where I knew that I had wanted to always kind of make it to the highest level of wrestling, but I kind of had this dream where I would like go wrestle in Olympics, win an Olympic medal, and then go work on like Wall Street or something like that after I graduated. And then this thing called COVID came along, and just to give you like a bird's eye view timeline, it was like I was supposed to graduate college in 2020, and that was lined up perfect, right, with the Olympics being in Tokyo. And so I was like, all right, yeah, I'll graduate college. I'll go wrestle in the Olympics in the summer. I'll do my thing. And then I'll go on and continue to do something outside of wrestling. Well, then Olympics gets pushed back a year because of COVID. I go compete there. And then it's a way shorter timeline to the next Olympics, Paris, being like the qualifications for that is only 2 years away because they do that the year before. So, and then on top of that, I did so well over my college career that I was offered to stay at the University of Michigan and continue competing through their Cliff Keen Wrestling Club, which for those of you who don't know wrestling, you can compare that to like how a soccer team, right? Or like a professional soccer team.
So like the G League?
Yeah, no, not like the G League, because like professional sports you get drafted, right, in a way. But like for professional soccer, right, you sign to a club. Okay, that's kind of how it works. There is a draft and whatnot, but for like basically a lot of people, you can get signed to a club, right? And that's kind of like the professional version of wrestling. Is there's the world in the Olympics after your college career, and they're attached to the college. So that's what kind of makes them unique. And swimmers do this same thing. So swimmers are familiar, but like you're basically a residential athlete competing like on behalf of the University of Michigan almost, but it's called the Cliff Keen Wrestling Club. And so I was signed there after I was done, and you're getting paid, kind of like a professional athlete, not like an NFL player, NBA player, but enough to do really well. And so that was kind of enticing for me. I'm like, I get to keep competing, doing what I love. Mm-hmm. But now instead of college wrestling, right, where I wasn't getting paid anything to do that, I just had a scholarship. I'm actually making money, and a good amount of money just to continue competing and wrestling and chasing my Olympic dreams. And so that's why I decided that, I felt like I still had more on the table too. I think I thought, that my wrestling career, I still had more to accomplish. And so I decided to go a couple extra years, compete in the World Championships, the Olympics a few more times. And it was great. I won a European championship, won a world bronze medal, and then after the Olympic medal. And so there was some amazing accomplishments that I got to check off my bucket list, and got to compete in another Olympics and was this close to winning another Olympic medal, lost in the bronze medal match. But yeah, I think that extended my wrestling career. But then as soon as even now I'm in an interesting point because I'm still kind of in my prime. And I could probably compete in the Los Angeles Olympics, but I guess that to answer this very long answer to your question is like, I kind of had an innate desire to do something outside of wrestling. And then the entrepreneurial side of it was just seeing, kind of seeing how much freedom I got from the sport of wrestling and like you get in what you put out. I felt like entrepreneurship is the best vehicle to kind of be able to accomplish that sort of lifestyle that I wanted, where it was I had more flexibility and freedom, but again, you have a lot more ownership and accountability. And I was like, wait, these two things seem like they're a lot more similar than they are different with the sport of wrestling and entrepreneurship. So yeah, just kind of a natural
that's
transition.
Sick. That's really sick. Wow, you're still in your prime. I know this goes a little bit different for what I was going to ask, but if you were to wrestle in the Los Angeles Olympics, like what would that take for you?
So, I mean, I've done it. I've qualified for the Olympics twice, and that's what's interesting. I compete for a different country called San Marino, but it doesn't really give me a massive advantage. It's not like I can just go just because I'm not competing against anybody within the country. I just get a free bid to the Olympics. Like actually, it's almost besides making the actual team, it's a harder route to make the Olympics competing for San Marino because Europe is the toughest country in the world, or toughest continent in the world, I should say, for qualification for the Olympics because you have Russia, you have all the Eastern Bloc countries, and just as far as the qualifications for qualifying through Europe, that's one of the ways you do it. It's a harder circuit to compete on versus the U.S. competes in like what they call the Pan American, which is basically North Central South America, and besides America in Cuba, it's like pretty easy to qualify as far as for your continent. So there's like basically what I would have to do is I would either have to qualify through taking top 6 in the world. Actually, now it's top 5 in the world at the World Championships the year before the Olympics. And honestly, to not overcomplicate it, that is how I've qualified the last 2 times. I've taken 5th when I qualified in Tokyo, and then I took 3rd and won a world bronze medal the year I qualified before Paris. And so basically, to sum it up, it's not like I would have to train just as hard as I've been training, if not more. To kind of maintain that and compete. And that was part of the reason that I decided I wanted to be done because I was like, I'm somebody that is all in. So if I wanted to, go compete in Los Angeles, I would have to probably put just about everything I have towards competing, and mostly because I would not just want to go make another Olympics. I'd want to try to win an Olympic title. Right. I think that's like, for me at least, my philosophy has always been like, don't half-ass it.
Yeah, my mom would always say, don't give half a haircut.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but that's
yeah.
Like, don't half-ass it, right? Like that's just like, I think that you should have a few things that you're really, really good at, and you should be, completely dedicated to those things. And so that was how I felt with the sport of wrestling. Like if I'm going to continue competing, it's going to be at the highest level. And I felt like I wasn't really ready to commit to another 4 years of that. So that kind of is a little bit of the philosophy of why, I've moved away from it. It's funny because I actually haven't even announced my retirement, and I feel like I stay in good enough shape that, if I really wanted to make that push, I could. But right now I'm pretty much done.
Yeah. How often do you train? And when you're going through the mission like club or like you were talking about, is that when you start athletes?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was when I started athletes. So that was like prime time. I was getting ready for the to qualify for the Paris Olympics the year before that. I started it right after I qualified. Now that I remember, it was like, yeah.
Sorry for those who don't know, Athletes was like a big wrestling IG page. Yeah, and it was one of the videos got even posted on SportsCenter, which was sick.
Yeah, and they actually just reposted it. Like I think over the last few months, they just keep going back to it. It's like their little goldmine video, and yeah. So I started that, and that was kind of like I would say that athletes, and you're like, for those who don't know, I'll give you one back at you, is like Mitchell's brother, Nick, who's also a CC alumni, has been in the social media game for a long time, kind of gave me when I was kind of trying to start this idea, we were workshopping it, and he was giving me some pointers. And it originally wasn't even going to be social media based. It was just going to be like an online training program. But that was when I kind of had my first introduction into the business side of social media and how important it is to have a presence if you're selling a service or a product, to have a presence on social media. And so, that was kind of when I started to have an interest in the game of media and social media and content creation and just building creatives, organic creatives and all that stuff. So, that kind of happened, and that was really fun. And I'm glad that I did it in wrestling because that was kind of my niche anyways. And so it was a little bit more of like, not diving head first in a way. Like it was kind of working with something I was already used to.
That's sick. So for Earning Earth, like how did you come up with the name, and then also what inspired you to do like what it is? And please also explain like what you do on Earning Earth.
Yeah. So I take a lot of credit, and I think that maybe I have a business in just developing names for companies. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I was like literally sitting on a plane, and I'm notoriously, I don't like to, I think planes and just like long car rides are a great time to be able to do some deep thinking, like for me personally. And so I was on like a longer plane ride, and I had this idea that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what I actually wanted, what kind of business I wanted to start, because wrestling had been my kind of my life for the last 20 years and still is in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm still very entrenched in that community, but I was like, I don't want to start a wrestling business because like I'd said, I think that, I wanted to build something outside of that identity. And so it was hard I was like, well, what would I start a business in? Like kind of thinking about my passions and whatnot. And I started just naturally on my own, reaching out to some really successful entrepreneurs and doing like some coffee chats and whatnot, and asking them about like how they came up with the idea, like what it took to kind of build that MVP, which is a minimum viable product, meaning like your kind of first initial go-to-market strategy. And then just all sorts of like business-like questions. And I realized that these conversations really helped me to kind of clarify my thinking about how I should go about kind of approaching what I wanted to do entrepreneurially. And then it kind of hit me when I was on the plane. Actually, shout out to ChatGPT, because it was kind of like this conversation that I was having that was just like, what are some different ways that I can kind of leverage what I already know to start a business? And it was like, basically said like, oh, financial documentarian, like you could travel around the world and talk about how different businesses operate in different parts of the world, and kind of highlight that for investment opportunities or something. It was like a very broad, but it got my mind running to where I was like, oh yeah, I had these coffee chats, and I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and have been able to ask them these questions have been very valuable for myself. Well, I already have a little bit of background in building out a media page and whatnot. Like maybe I could do an idea where it's interviewing entrepreneurs in a podcast or some sort of setting, or, the idea was very rough. Again, it was like, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And then it just like, I was on the plane and it kind of like snapped. I was coming up with thinking of different names. I was like financing freedom, because I think that was like it said like a financial documentarian. And then I was like, I think that's a little bit too like niche down. And so then I'm trying to think of what the word is, like
broader names, like broader names.
No, like alliteration, I think is the word. Like it's like financing freedom. And so I ended up doing Earning Earth. Okay. It just kind of came to me when I was sitting on a plane one day, because I wanted it to be like business, like related in some aspects, but also could be applied to broader cultural.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. You're right. So like broader cultural and people-based. Yeah. Like, because it's like, if I really wanted to, Earning Earth could have nothing to do with businesses. It could just be going and interviewing people and seeing how they kind of like what purpose, like how they draw their purpose and like what they do on a day-to-day basis. And so, I think that was just like, for me, I kind of was thinking about larger scale and how I could, if this thing were to grow, I don't want to have to change the name.
Yeah. I love the name. I think it's a sick name. So when you're at Michigan and you went to the Ross Business School, Do you think that your business degree or what you learned when you're taking business classes helped you for what you're doing now?
Yeah. Yes. And actually, I'll say yes and no. So it's funny because I have a natural, I think I tend to kind of underestimate how much of I have a natural understanding of the principles of business because of going to business school. But then I think that the no part comes from the fact that you can only learn so much by learning. Like a lot of or by being in a classroom and learning. Like you have to learn by doing. And that's what I've learned from the doing these interviews is like a lot of these people don't have business backgrounds. And it kind of that was the key kind of principle that I've been able to like draw is that most of the things that you learn, you can only apply them if you're actually doing it. Like it's very hard when you're learning all these different kind of facets of business to internalize them unless you have like a real world example to apply them to, unless you're like working on an active problem. And so I think that the reason I say I'm leaning more towards like you don't need to go to business school, like because my intro video is it's kind of funny. Like when I introduced Earning Earth, I said I went to one of the best business schools in the world, and I still don't know how to start a business. There is kind of some truth to that because it's like the whole point of business and why there's so much return for starting your own business is because there's more of a risk. There's no like blueprint to what it actually takes to run a successful business. And especially like the models that you build out and you learn like we did a lot of case studies, and it's like you can only learn the principles from the case study. You can't actually be like, oh, this company did this, so I'm just going to implement that to what I'm doing. Like a lot of times they don't directly translate. And I'm learning even from like, I've interviewed a lot of restaurant owners, for example. Like every restaurant has their own unique way of doing things and it works specifically for them. But maybe you take that and you apply it to what your restaurant's doing and it might not work. Like, and so I would say that it's helped me a lot to in my interviewing process. As far as like being able to talk with business owners, I know like about like cost of goods, right? Like that's a very common term in a lot of product-based, or even service-based industries. There's like, what is your net versus gross margin? So a lot of like business school terms have helped me to get my foot in the door with business owners and be able to further conversations. And like, for me, that's been huge because I think that a lot of people have seen my content, or a lot of like potential business owners that I want to interview have seen my content, and it kind of helps validate that I'm not just like somebody that's out there trying to, right? Like
I know what you mean. Like I have clients I work with too, and a lot of the time they're like, oh, you're in high school, we don't know if you trust you. But like once you have that case study or that one viral hit, it's so much easier to like have other people like respect you. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I actually haven't really mentioned any of these people that I did Olympic wrestling before. That is definitely an immediate validator, but I've kind of tried to build this idea without that as the identity, because I think that crutch can kind of give you a false sense of whether or not your idea actually works or not. It's like maybe they just want to like, or this idea is working because of what I did previously. But that's kind of a little like trump card that I have in my sleeve that, hopefully going forward I'm thinking about ways where I can kind of leverage that as we scale to kind of build this out. So
no, that's sick. What was your like first viral hit piece for Earning Earth?
So first viral hit, what are we talking viral? Everybody has different definition.
Like viral reel, like, or like your first viral video, or like something that you're like, okay, like I can actually do this and I now have success in it.
So I would say that it happened pretty quickly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I would probably 2 weeks in, I went into this bookstore in Ann Arbor, and it was called Westside Bookshop. And there's this old guy, his name's Jay Platt. No offense to call him old, but he's ran the bookstore for 50 years, right? He's literally owned this bookstore in Ann Arbor it was going to be his 50th year anniversary coming up that fall. And a lot of the success that I've had with Earning Earth has been also the fact that I'm seeking out people that probably haven't done a lot of interviews or media. So like stories that really don't have any coverage behind them. and I've kind of found them in real time. And this was an example. So I met this guy, go in there and basically give him like a business card. And I'm like, hey, I'm starting this media company. The whole goal, and I haven't even really talked about the goal. So it's a good time kind of to explain it in this story is like, I'm like, my goal is to uncover the untold stories of successful or unique entrepreneurs and business owners. And it's kind of turned into small business owners specifically, and teach people about entrepreneurship by telling your story and asking you questions that are financial, operational, but also just, personal to you and like why you started this business and like what you've learned, what inspired you, all that. And he was kind of like at first a little bit reluctant because he's like, I haven't done too many interviews. And I was like, it's for the next generation. Like really my goal is to inspire younger people to think entrepreneurially. And he was like, that kind of got him excited because he was like, you know what? Like I do have a lot of lessons. I've ran this place for 50 years. Basically I did this story with him. And it took me like 8 hours to edit, I think. I went home. I did the interview with him. It was like a 20-minute interview, but I knew kind of how I wanted to tell the story. And it was like the hook is really important, as you know, Mitchell. But, I think that was something I thought about a lot. And it was like, do you ever wonder how your local bookstore makes money? And it's like, let's go find out. And then it intros him. He's like, my name is Jay Platt. I've owned this business since 1975. And then like, it was basically like a voiceover back and forth between like me voiceover, doing a voiceover with like B-roll of the shop, and then me asking questions and him telling all these lessons, kind of connecting the story of him and also like how the bookstore makes money, kind of what my hook was. And that video, I think within the first like week did like almost 1 million views. I think it's at like, it did over 500,000 views. It's close to 1 million views now. And it was like a 2-minute video.
Wow.
So like, that's where I was like, I know how to get like quick views on it's easy to think about like getting 500,000 or 1 million views on like a 15-second reel. Right. But like the fact that this thing had almost 1 million views and was growing like that. And it's like a long story and I'm at the center of it, kind of like telling it. That was when I kind of knew I'm like, okay, if I can keep doing this, like this style, and getting those kind of views, like this could be a really, really good idea and really good, or like a great way to build out like a media page in a media company.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I'm so excited like that you started it, and it's been great to watch your videos. They're always entertaining. When I first saw that one specifically, I was like, I think I know this guy. And then I looked, I was like, oh, it's Myles. I was like, that's amazing. But for your strategy for making content and for meeting people, you said to me that it's been cold calls, but do you also like go in there to like shops and be like, hey, like what you did to the bookstore guy, like here's my business card, or is it mainly just cold calling?
So a combination of both. Now I'm at the point where I've actually, I'm really excited about this, but also nervous because I'm like, I could get used to this. I have somebody scheduling for me.
Oh, nice.
So I down in Austin, for those who don't know, the University of Texas is there. So I was leveraged the college network, and I know there's a lot of college students looking for work experience. So I was able to get one of the college students to kind of help me to schedule these business owners and do the the outreach, whether it's cold email, cold calling, or just leveraging their personal network. But for the most part, like up until a month ago, I was literally, when I first got to Austin, for example, I was going out and just had a stack of business cards in my pocket and would walk into some businesses and say like, oh, hey, is the business owner here? Like, and kind of explain the concept and give out some business cards. And then if not, I was cold DMing on Instagram, cold calling. And actually, funny enough, like Instagram is still, to me, I'm like that for the businesses that are on there, that's probably the best way to get these interviews or to like work with them. But then like, again, one of my favorite interviews and the one that has gained a lot of traction was like a guy who's been making boots for 50 years. Like go figure, like in Michigan, it's a bookstore. In Texas, very, very fitting. It's a famous boot maker. And I had to cold call him. And when I cold called them, they really appreciated the fact that I like had reached out like that way, like kind of the old school way, and went in and introduced myself. And that interview ended up being not only one of my favorites, but it got a lot of traction. I think like total across platforms that probably did probably like 2 to 3 million views. And then we had a YouTube video that we did that did like 20,000 views for a long form, which was pretty good because I really don't know how to do long form yet. I'm kind of trying to figure it out, but good traction. So I would say for me, I'm like by any means, like however I can get a hold of people. There's even sometimes like how I started this idea is that this is like where I think I encourage people to get something, like starting is half the battle. So I literally had like ordered a microphones on Amazon, showed up to a farmer's market and didn't know anybody there. Just started walking up to people, having a conversation, being like, do you own this business? Do you do it full time? And then being like, okay, can we restart this? I'm going to walk up to you, ask you if you own any businesses. And then let's just have a conversation like we just did. I'm going to record it. And that was like my first 2 weeks of videos, was just going to the Ann Arbor Farmers Market and Eastern Market and basically asking people like entrepreneurial questions about, you know, kind of like you're in the trenches, you're at a farmer's market. Like, why did you decide to start a business? Like, how much are you making? How much do you have to do to make this a full-time job? What are the margins? Yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm. For wrestling, I know there's like a big mental state and big physical state, but obviously and clearly I think it has. How has that transpired to like entrepreneurship for like the mindset, as you said, and as I know, like your time is unlimited. So like if you have a client based on a month, like you can get the work done in the first week, or you could like wait, but like you have to get the work done. But your time is more expandable, but also you still have to get the results and still have to do a very good job. So how is wrestling like gone with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is the self accountability aspect. You know, I remind myself like every morning. It's like the good news is it's all on me. So like I don't have to worry about anybody else like having to tell me what to do, and like I don't have to, right, like necessarily rely completely on somebody else. Now it's a little different because I have like some editors and some schedulers, like I was saying, but for the most part, it's like it's mostly on me, and that's great. That's also a bad thing if you know, or it's like some days you wake up and that could be a bad thing, because it's like if you don't schedule your time, like I think that the urgent will crush the important. I think that like Tim Ferriss, he's like one of my favorite entrepreneurs, the way that he thinks. He says that like, and I see that where it's just like your kind of day-to-day things, like the day can get filled with a bunch of things that aren't that important. And, you know, you can kind of find yourself like feeling like you're working really hard, but not getting a lot done. And so like you have to be, I think the hardest thing and I see this kind of in wrestling too, is like if you don't address the big things, like they don't just address themselves. Like it's kind of like those things can just keep getting kicked down the road. Like the can just keep getting kicked down the road with that. So I think that that's something that I'm like wrestling. I embraced later on in my career, was like you have to be really intentional about the things that you're doing. And I think that that's what makes a great wrestler. Like is, you know, you not just showing up to practice, but kind of having a plan when you show up to practice. And that level of discipline is something that I feel like is carrying over pretty well so far in business. Is like I'm kind of used to having like and thinking really analytically, because that's what I had to do in wrestling. And so it's the same kind of skill that has to transfer over to just being a business owner. I would say the other thing is like I've kind of always naturally had pretty big goals because of the sport of wrestling. And so now it's like in the business side of things, starting off, I'm like, yeah, I want to have like, you know, I want to have a travel TV show, and I want to have, you know, a massive like 1 million audience podcast. Like those are the things I'm throwing out right away. Like, and those are the goals. It's not like, yeah, I mean, I hope I get to like, you know, like this can give me a menial salary and I can sit there and, you know, have a couple business owners a month and interviewing them, and it's all fine and dandy. It was kind of like how can this thing become something massive? Like, what does that look like? And so I think that I got that mindset from wrestling, and kind of being like, you know, why, if you're going to work really hard at something, why would you not expect a lot out of it.
Right.
And that's something that I've kind of always done naturally in my wrestling career. And so that was easier. And then, so I would say to sum it up, it's like self-accountability, and kind of within that self-accountability category, being really intentional about like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. The second is big goals. And then the last one is probably, just the delayed gratification. Because I think that, and this is something that I'm still dealing with. And even it was very hard in wrestling, and it's still very, kind of a challenge that I deal with, is like, you could go, like whatever you want, or what you think you want, like it's very easy to just, for your mind to trick you to think like you want that thing right now. Right. Versus, and for starting a business, it's most people, like what I've learned, for example, the restaurant industry, you don't turn a profit in general or on average until 2 to 3 years after opening a restaurant. This is probably more specifically for brick and mortar, because, you have your startup costs are usually in the 6 figures. And so to get that return on investment, it's usually like 2 to 3 years is like what's industry standard. So think about it. Like, you basically have to work for 2 to 3 years, and restaurant owners, the reason that I've kind of like really liked interviewing them is because they're usually in the trenches for a while before they can step away from their business. So like interviewing them, they're usually like, their mind is very sharp because they're in the thick of it. And so it's kind of the same thing in wrestling, where like, if you really want to be somebody, I remember a young kid asked me like, what does it take to be wrestle in the Olympics? And I like jokingly said, I'm like, well, it's really not that much. It's just like, all you have to do is train really intentionally and consistently for 5 to 6 days a week for 20 years of your life. Mm-hmm. And then you can make it to the Olympics, and it's like, and that's just a chance. That doesn't mean that you're going to do it. Like, it's like, I mean, I know people that have done that and they've fallen one match short of qualifying, or, to win an Olympic medal. It's like, there's people that have sacrificed everything and not done it. So I've got to learn that. And now starting my own kind of business in the media world, content world, it's like, this, that you're probably, it's not like a normal job where it's like, okay, I start working and then I'm getting paid a salary or like a, money on a month-to-month basis, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to go join social media because I can make $10,000 a month. It's like, usually it's like, you don't make any money for like a year or two, mm-hmm. But then if you're doing it right and you're actually pouring yourself into it, you can very quickly, get to the point where you're making more money than you know what to do with, or you build a brand that's $1 million brand over a couple of years, and that's, to me, that's like something money can't buy, like is having like a brand that you love, some that's behind something you love doing, and, can kind of bring that kind of, reward in. So I would say that delayed gratification, that final piece, is like the key piece of the puzzle that I've learned from wrestling, that now I'm kind of having to apply. And again, all these things are, just because you learn them, it doesn't mean that they're easy, like, and that they're going to transition like that. It's like, you kind of have to wake up every day, and the decisions you make are going to, still affect whether those lessons can apply or not. And there's kind of this natural inertia that you have to fight.
Yeah. A lot of kids ask me, they're like, Mitchell, you run these big Instagram pages. They're like, how do I build one like you? Well, they're like, I want to make tons of money. I'm like, well, first off, as perfectly as you said, like I said, if you think it's a get rich, like quick, and then like just live on a yacht and have a bunch of girls around you, I said, you're completely wrong. I said, I'm like posting 3 times a day. I get critiqued by people around me. Like, my grammar sucks. Like, so I've had posts that like should have done well and that haven't, because my grammar was bad. So I got to refix them. It's like constantly working and constantly having pages fail that like really like helped me with work ethic. And it's just like, I completely agree with everything you just said. But for kids who maybe in CC and kids around the world who want to start entrepreneur, what steps would you say for them to take? I know a lot of them, for me at least, was fear. Like, I was 17 and I was like, dude, I'm super afraid of like starting. And like, I took like 2 to 3 months, like where I thought I was working, but I really didn't do anything because I was afraid, until I mustered up the courage to do it. But what would you say to kids who want to start entrepreneurship, what they should do and how they should attack it?
I think the first thing is where a lot of people go wrong is they think about entrepreneurship from a money standpoint of like how much money they can make by starting a certain thing. Like they look to things like social media because they're like, that's where I see a lot of kids getting rich. They're running these Instagram accounts, or like maybe they're like, oh, I want to be a day trader. Right? Like I went through a day trading phase because I do love finance. And so like I thought could be interesting in day trading. So like during my wrestling career, I even spent like 2 years kind of day trading. And like so far for me, and I actually would regurgitate more so because I'm so new in my entrepreneurial journey, that this is more me communicating what I've learned from, I think I'm now at 82 business owners I've interviewed. Wow. And so I'm asking this question, like, what advice would you have for somebody that's wanting to start their own business? And the answer that I get the most is you have to love what you do. And so to kind of extend that, I think for younger people, it's hard to figure out what you really love, right? Like I mean, how many times do people major in something and then they realize that they never use their major because, you know, that it was just kind of like a path they thought they should go on, but they didn't really feel excited about it. I would say write down a list of things that you think that you really enjoy doing, that you're really excited and really curious about, and then build from your values and your passions a bit, or build a business idea from your values and your passions. Start there versus thinking about how the opportunities that are out there that you can make the most money on. That is such a simple piece of advice, but I think that most, like 90% of people probably are considering the money aspect first before they consider what they're actually passionate about and what they actually like doing. And I think I feel comfortable saying this to the kids of CC, right? And to the younger people, because this is the time, right, where like you're probably more financially supported by your parents, or, you know, like you can actually take risks. It's harder to say this when you have a family to support, or, you know, like I know that a lot of the entrepreneurs, right, they're like, oh, well, you know, this is what I'm doing right now. This is the plan, but I have these constraints. Like, this is the time where you're like, hey, and I think we live in an era where like almost anything is monetizable, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you are creative enough and you can find an audience and a customer, which the internet makes this pretty easy to do, like you have a business. And so like, I mean, look, like actually speaking of for Earning Earth, we're thinking about going to, like, they have a massive card trading show here at the Suburban Showplace, right, mm-hmm. right down the street this Saturday. And that's a perfect example. Like, people are making money selling Pokemon cards. Yeah. Right? They're making money selling baseball cards. Like, and it's their whole career, and they're making more money than they did like, these 50-year-olds are making more money than they did in their entire career as like an engineer or something. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say that, like, start with your passions and the things that you enjoy doing and see how you can make a business from there. And then over time you'll figure out the business plan and how to make money, right? There's a lot of resources on the internet that you can find for, right, like how to start a business and how to, you know, think about those things. But it's really hard to, you know, because for the most part it takes a lot more time, right? Like starting your own business and trying to make money on your own versus if you're a high school or a college kid, just going and getting a job or an internship where you're kind of on more of a set path and a schedule. Like, to me, that's great. But I think that taking this risk early on is the net returns in the long run are just ridiculous. Like or the compounding returns, I should say. So, yeah, I would say that start from your passion, because even if you don't make money, then at least you're doing something that you like doing in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like, versus like if you don't make money on, say, one of those opportunities that was, right, it was more of a money grab, then it's just like you feel like you walk away with nothing. But at least if you work towards your passion, it's like, well, I enjoyed my time doing that and I learned all these skills because I was really naturally curious about it. To me, that's a way better way to approach it. I think that, like, yeah, I all the people that I had talked to and that were most excited, like, just naturally had more of like a pep in their step and were, you know, able to deal with the hardships and challenges of entrepreneurship. It was because that business was doing something they loved. And I noticed, like, final thing is, I mean, I haven't stuck to like one industry, so it's been kind of cool to see that. Like this lady's making soaps, and she basically said like her definition of success was making over 5 figures a month passively, so she could go and enjoy a holiday for a month with her family. And she was like, I did that last month, and it was kind of cool to see that because it's like, you're telling me you did that and you were making soaps, like, but she was like, yeah, I just naturally like during COVID I picked up a passion for making soap, like I was doing it in my free time. And so you can really do it. Like I've seen it happen where people are doing it with just about any sort of like hobby passion turn into a business.
No, completely agree. It's funny you brought up sports cards because that's how I got started. My first ever sports card I bought was a Zach Wilson, and I lost so much money on that. Forever, great motivator for me because I was like, I did not think that through. Bad financial decision, and I was like, this was just awful. And then eventually, I love sports cards so much, I started a sports card Instagram page, and I got like a couple million views on like a couple of my first videos, and so I was like, this is amazing. And then naturally, I kind of talked to Nick, and then brought me onto his pages and created my own. But no, that's amazing, dude. I completely agree. It's great to see someone from CC like really use the social media space because I feel like at least younger kids know my age the power of it, but like a lot of business owners don't, and so I really help them with it, and they're like super thankful, and they're like it helps their business so much. So completely agree. But with you being from Michigan and friendships, like how is that? Because I know one of the biggest things for me is that the network here at CC has been great. I have a business partner now, and having him and working with him has been great. Do you have a good team around you and stuff that helps you through like the tough times or like stuff that you might be confused on or give you better insight?
Yeah. So I that's like something that I'm actively working on building right now. I think that the one thing that wrestling is interesting is like it's a very like individual sport. And so you kind of, there's a kind of a gift and a curse that you learn to rely on yourself. But there's also this aspect of like, you don't realize how much there's this team behind you that's working until after, like I've started to realize it after I'm done wrestling. And I tried to be active about thinking about it. So, I would say that it's just like the thing that I try to tell myself is, so now I have like an editor, right? I have somebody that's scheduling interviews. I have a videographer that was helping me out. When we started off, it was actually funny. There was shout out CC alum Joe Fanning. He was one of the guys who just like in the initial, I was like, hey, can you come with me and video this farmer's market? And so he had come with me, and yet a lot of the times with content, like most of the time, you need at least, if you're doing face forward content, you probably need at least one person, which is a videographer. And so I had a few people that were helping me kind of on and off doing the video stuff early on. So a team is really important. And I'm realizing like as you start to scale, like 1 + 1, I like to say 1 + 1 = 11, where it's like having another person who's extremely passionate about your idea or your business is like exponential returns. Like, and you really can't do everything yourself. I think that, so like for me, that's something that I'm wrestling with, no pun intended, right? It's like, you want to be able to maximize your own time, and take on the world, but you realize like dividing this up and getting people who are really good at what they do in that specific field and kind of having specialists around you is a really important part of running a business. So I do have a good team. And I'm hoping like that's something like in the new year, I kind of promised myself was like, okay, I'm going to like even put more time and energy to, instead of me trying to like get really good at all these different things, like become better at like being the, kind of leader and working with a good group of people.
For the new year, speaking of the new year, what's your next plans? Like, how do you see yourself in like a couple of years, even 5 years or 10 years? Like, where do you see Myles Amine, and where do you see your business?
Yeah, that's actually like, now that I'm home for winter break, that's one of the main things that I want to kind of figure out before the new year. I said like kind of take a look back, and I don't know that I believe in like a 5 or a 10 year plan. I think that things we're in such a changing world that to try to like imagine 10 years, like as far as a business, it's almost like you don't want to, I want to be more flexible than that. But so that I'm not just like beating around the bush with the answer. If I was to give kind of a rough idea, I think that for me, Earning Earth, like I saw the initial idea, and what made me really excited about it is that I love the show like Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain. And then there's another one that's like Diners, Drives, or Drive-Ins and Dives with Guy Fieri, which is like basically they're both like travel TV shows where these guys, they're the personalities of Anthony Bourdain and Guy Fieri going around interviewing different restaurant owners. And Anthony Bourdain is more like an overall culture, right? He goes to like an entire country and kind of tries to sum up that country through its food and through its like people. For me, I would be really excited about something like that. If Earning Earth, we can get it to there where it's like more like a full production, and we're going around kind of teaching again how different businesses operate around the country and around the world. And then I would say that that's like one of the visions that I have. Again, this flexibility is something that I've been keeping it there because it's such a new idea. That another thing is like having some sort of distribution, like a podcast where, I'm interviewing some of the most interesting entrepreneurs and business owners. And maybe this is even extends to just people and kind of telling their story of how they're earning Earth, quote unquote. I think that's something that I've thought about after the initial idea came up, that I was like, I could get really excited about that too. Because you and I just sitting here right now, like I love the one-on-one conversation. And I think that, a lot of the wisdom that I've drawn has, I've learned from, like, I would have never been able to have unless I like sat down and watched like one of my favorite podcasts or something. Like a lot of it does have to be through real world experiences, but there is wisdom that you can draw from just two people kind of sitting here talking. So, those are the two. And then like outside of Earning Earth and business, I guess like I would say 5-10 year plan. It's actually not like crazy conquer the world, like anything like that. It's more, I think that you kind of you don't realize how important it is, like family and those kind of things. So to like be able to have a family of my own, that's like one of my biggest life goals. It's a pretty simple one, but I think that that's the most important and prolific. Now that I'm getting not older, I just turned 29, so. But I'm realizing that that's really important. So I guess that those are the two things that I've been kind of on the horizon. But then again, I'm also in kind of an exploration phase of life, being done with, dedicating myself to school and wrestling, very specifically over the last like 20 years. So, that's why it's a little harder to answer your question, I think, because I'm like, I think that it's important to kind of be able to like really explore your likes and interests and not just be like, okay, I have to do this thing. This is my set plan. Anything that strays away from it is bad.
You know what I'd like to see is I'd really like to see long form content on YouTube. I think that'd be sick. Maybe more of like the behind the scenes of the like horse guy. Like I saw that video of him like showing how the boots are made and everything. It'd be cool if we got like more of a long form.
There is a long form.
Oh, there is. I didn't see it. My bad. But I'd like to. Do you post a lot on YouTube?
No, I mean we've done. So I've done 5 long form episodes.
Okay.
I did one with basically just kind of an extension of the business owner, like the people I've interviewed, kind of a breakdown of like their like business model or their story. We did actually one video that's a long form that's done pretty well. It was like we basically did like an 800 lemonade challenge.
I love that one.
Yeah, with the lemonade stand, Detroit Lemonade and Eastern Market. And they tried to sell 800 lemonades in a single day, and he got to like 700. It was pretty crazy. And so we basically like documented that. And it was like, dude, selling them at $5 a piece. So you can kind of do the math on like what he's making. It's like,
wasn't that what made it go viral? It's like, you do the math.
Yeah, you do the math. Yeah, he did say that. He's a character. He's Matt Rosen. He's it's kind of funny how interested people are in starting lemonade stands. Yeah, that is, speaking of, you said like, what was our first video? I would have never thought, that was an interview that came up organically. I was just, like I said, I was walking around Eastern Market in Detroit, and basically Joe Fanning, who's, like I said, he's a CC alum, he was with me, and he was like, yeah, we should, what do you think about like interviewing like this guy? He runs a lemonade stand. And I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. And so I interviewed him, and then next thing you know, like I went back and did another interview with him, because I think now total his interviews alone in clips have done like 50 million views.
Wow. That's amazing.
Like, it's pretty crazy. Like, and I think total we're over like 100 million. So like he's accounted for half the views, and that's kind of how the internet works. The more you're in it, you kind of see like there are like one-offs, like it's like an 80-20 where like 20% of your videos are probably generating 80% of the views.
So you talked about your family life and how that's important to you. Like, why is that specifically important to you?
I'm blessed to have grown up in, a very strong family environment where, I've had really good relationships with, my immediate family. My brother and I, we went to CC together. We went to Michigan together. We wrestled all over the world together. My older sister, there's three of us. It's the same with her. Now she just had a child, and I have a little nephew, and my relationship with her has been, I went and visited her when she was in college, and like we've all just been really close, my siblings, and I've had, my father, he was a wrestler, and so like kind of carrying on that legacy and like having that relationship. My mom, like San Marino, she has the ties. That's how I competed. So like, I feel like for me, I've realized how much of my identity has been formed by, like my family's values and kind of the way that they've raised me. And so I've been very fortunate. And I think that a lot of, my intrinsic and extrinsic success, and just like who I am as a person has come from them. And so I think that just being blessed like that, and then, being a part of a family like CC, and then, Michigan wrestling, Michigan, you start to realize like that stuff is so important. And that like all the other stuff, if you don't have that as the foundation, like all this external stuff can kind of, it's very fleeting. And, so I guess I just realized, through being all the blessings that I've had in that sense, that like I shouldn't take that stuff for granted, and that it's really important to prioritize that, because it's not going to prioritize itself. If you don't put that at the forefront, like you can, I could be like, oh, my next 5-year goal is just to make $10 million and travel the world and, start a, successful business. But if you leave out that first part, it's like, I feel like you're going to look back and there's still going to be regrets. Like there's going to be a little bit of a hole that's empty inside. And so I think that for me, like I kind of realized that if I could do one or the other, and I would like to do both, but that the first one is much more foundational than the family one is much more foundational than the one that was previously mentioned.
For my last question, and thank you for coming on again, how do you want to be remembered?
I think I think legacy is kind of something that I don't think about as much. Personally, I think that you can kind of, again, you can do things for the wrong reasons when you think about being remembered. Like my wrestling career, for example, like how I wanted to do it because I loved wrestling and because I, like the experience itself and what I got to experience, the people that I got to bring along with me, that was enough for me. Like to now go back and, it's great to have, your name on the wall in certain places and people to, like all the accomplishments, to look at it in that way. That's great. But so what I've learned from that is that like, I think that the most important thing and how I want to be remembered is just like as a good person. Like it wouldn't have all meant anything, and nobody would have been rooting for me if I didn't carry myself a certain way off the mat. And so I think that same thing applies for how I'd want to be remembered. Hopefully, when you say being remembered, I'm still pretty young, so
We're talking about like your legacy and like, when you, I know you are so young, but like, I guess more for like your legacy and like what your business wants to be, and be like, okay, I live my life to the fullest.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that you said it right there. Like, just to know that I didn't like. I'll give a quote. I'll give a quote that I think about, because if we're talking about, like you said, live life to the fullest. There's like, I think it's originally, I heard this quote in Interstellar, the movie, but it's from like some poet or something, and it's like, rage against the dying of the light. Do not go gently into that good night. And so like that second part, do not go gently into that good night. It basically means like that good night is like eternal, right? Eternal, like being gone from the earth, like death. It's not eternal because right? Like the eternal is actually what we're all looking forward to. But while you are here on earth, for me, I'm like, you only get to do it once, and it's like, if you can kind of pick your head up and, kind of peek your head outside and not miss the forest for the trees, you see that, right? Like time is very short, and that you only get a certain amount of time to do the things that really, and like to focus on the things that really matter. So like for me, I'm like, be really intentional and figure out what you want to get out of life, and then full sprint ahead. Like, do not let like these little distracting, fleeting things waste your time, your super precious time, right? That's the money, all those things are all renewable. Time is the only thing that's not renewable. So like for me, like my legacy is like that I focused on the things that mattered specifically to me. Like I don't want my legacy to have anything to do with anybody else. It's just like what I would want to look back and be like, I did the things that I wanted to do with the people that I wanted to do, and I didn't waste time, right? Like focusing on things that didn't matter. That's basically the only legacy I want. And ultimately what that means is probably to like be a good person, right? Build something that I felt was meaningful and had purpose, and to love the people that I got to spend my time with, and, made the most of those moments and memories. That's basically it.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on, Myles. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mitchell. Appreciate you, brother.